Good evening. You know, there's actually a fair amount of people here. You can all do better than that. Hello! Thank you. Thank you. That's good. That's good. I won't need to clean my ears out tonight, so that's fantastic. Now, as some of you know, when we do an all-age service, at the moment we're looking at heroes. Ooh. Shall I go home? You know, we're looking at heroes, and today's hero is Thomas. No, not that Thomas, no. But in his films, it's all adventurous. Look, he's floating in the air. That's a hero, isn't it? No? Not that Thomas. Okay. What about this Thomas? That's me. Yeah? My middle name is Thomas. Ah. You don't think I make a good hero? Do you? Do you? Think you make a hero? Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the next slide. What do you think? Oh, Jill thinks I look like Mrs. Slocum in that shot, but for those of you who are of a certain age. Anyway, thank you very much. You could go to logo now, for now. Brilliant. Right, so it's not me, and anyway, my first name is Peter anyway, so it doesn't count. So who is this Thomas we're talking about? Well, the best place to start is in the Bible, and I'd like Joe to come up and do our first reading.
The reading is from John chapter 20. It's verses 24 to 28, or 6, I don't know. 28, I beg your pardon. Okay. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God."
Thank you, Joe. So, Thomas gets upset and doubts that Jesus is really alive and says he won't be convinced until he actually touches Jesus' wounds. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound much like a hero to me, does it? Maybe we're missing something out. Okay, let's look elsewhere. Thomas is one of those characters who's often in the background. Yeah, in the first 3 Gospels, he only appears in the list of disciples. In fact, that is it for him in the first 3 Gospels. Really, not very much. He's not one of the inner circle of 3 that spends a lot of time with Jesus on their own. And he's just somehow there, you know, taking notice of what Jesus says, but still just there, which is still not hero material. I'm getting a bit frustrated with this. Okay, it is really only in John's Gospel that we see him at all. He appears a few times with that, and is called Thomas, also known as Didymus. Now, those of us of a certain age maybe thinks he comes from Knotty Ash. Next picture. Yes, some of you are going, what? They are the Diddy men. Diddy men? Ask your grandmother. That joke just makes me feel so very old, I'm telling you. Okay. Now, both Thomas and Didymus have the same meaning. They both mean twin. Thomas is from the Greek, Theum, and Didymus is... No, it's the other way around, isn't it? Thomas is from the Hebrew, Theum, and Didymus is from the Greek. They both mean twin. Now, it could just mean that he was a twin. As simple as that. It was almost certainly the name of someone from a previous generation of his family, because that was how things were done in those days. However, there is also a tradition within the church that he was double-minded, twin-minded, and he was always questioning and doubting and questioning again. Now, there is no evidence for this, but it is interesting. And again, it isn't much like a hero, is it? I did some research, and he's not mentioned doing anything special except what the disciples do. He's not a special person, he's not rich, and his name has become a byword for people who doubt, hasn't it? You must have heard it before. When someone hesitates, people call them doubting Thomases. So taking all of this into account, can you see how he might be a hero? Because I can't. Maybe we need to cast our net a bit wider. Thomas wanted to see for himself. He questioned what was happening. Is there another hero in the Bible who questioned?
Tell us about it, Peter.
Pardon? Abraham. Abraham is one, but he's not one that I'm thinking. Pardon? No, but keep going. Pardon? No, not Joseph. Keep going. You see, there are lots of them, aren't there? Let's look at Gideon, shall we? Okay. Joe again, please.
I couldn't answer it because I had the reading passage. So. This reading is from Judges chapter 6, verses 36 to 40. Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you said." And that is what happened. Gideon rose early the next day. He squeezed the fleece and wrung out the dew, a bowlful of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece. But this time, make the fleece dry and let the ground be covered with dew." That night, God did so. Only the fleece was dry, all the ground was covered with dew.
So, what happened there? Did it? Fantastic. So, we're on more solid ground with this, aren't we? Gideon is a proven hero. He's fought battles, he hears from God, he's an all-round good guy. Yeah? Yes, Peter. This is an all-age service. I'm trying to do my best. Right. So, he asked God for the fleece, to be wet when the ground was dry and dry when the ground was wet. Yes? Cool. And God did it for him. He didn't tell him off. He didn't go off in a huff and say, no, I'm not doing it, I'm God. He did it for him. So, what do Thomas and Gideon have in common? Now, Thomas didn't lead any great battles, but he did question, just as Gideon did. Now, in the end, he didn't need to touch Jesus' wounds, because when he saw him, he immediately believed. That was all the evidence he needed. It's an odd thing to think, but maybe he was a hero because he questioned. Not being afraid to ask for evidence and questioning is a good trait. Now, the other disciples knew what they were talking about. They'd seen Jesus, but Thomas didn't, and he wasn't afraid to question it. We ourselves shouldn't be afraid to question God. In fact, there are many people who say they put out a fleece like Gideon, but a metaphorical one, or at least they're the only ones I've heard of, where they're asking God to prove that what they want to do, that what they're hearing is right. I did this when I became the leader of the national coordinator for the Christian Dance Fellowship of Britain. I couldn't pick to be a leader of an organization with a small name, could I? It's always a mouthful to say it. Anyway, when the previous national coordinator left, I thought I felt God saying that I was to take up the role. But even though I was a director of the fellowship, I had never done anything like that in my life. I'd never led a big group of people that's a national organization. It was scary. I didn't know if I had the skills. I didn't know if I was the right personality type. I just didn't. So, first of all, I asked people to pray for me. And they all said the same thing, that God was saying, do it. But that wasn't enough for me. You know, I really, really wanted to know. So I asked God to prove it to me. And you know how he did it? He never shut up about it. He went on and on and on every single day about it until I decided to go for it. I got the position, and it's turned out quite well, really. It's been quite good, without blowing my own trumpet and being humble. Now, there are some people who are not convinced that we should be doing this sort of thing, and they see laying out a fleece, if you like, as testing God. I don't think God minds. It's okay to, like Thomas, to be upset and to question God. It's okay, like Gideon, to try and find out what God really wants for us. He can take it. He is God. Thank you.